Imagine you're putting on a pair of jeans. You slide your hand into the front pocket, and then you notice it. That tiny pocket. Too small for your phone, too small for your wallet, barely big enough for anything useful. And yet, it's been there your entire life. Every pair of jeans, every brand, every style, the same strange little pocket. And once you notice it, a simple question becomes impossible to ignore. Why is it there? It doesn't feel decorative. It doesn't feel accidental. So what was it actually made for? Most people assume it's useless, or that it's just a leftover design detail that never got removed. But here's the surprising truth. That tiny pocket exists for a very specific reason. A reason that made perfect sense when jeans were first invented. And once you understand it, you'll realize that pocket isn't small by accident. If you enjoy uncovering the hidden reasons behind everyday things, take a second to like the video and subscribe. Because today, we're uncovering the real reason jeans have this tiny pocket. To understand it, we have to go back to the 1800s. Long before smartphones, long before wallets full of cards, before jeans were fashion. Jeans were workwear. They were designed for miners, cowboys, railroad workers, and laborers who spent their days doing physical, dirty, demanding jobs. And when you're working like that, one object mattered more than almost anything else. Your watch. Not a smartwatch, not a digital clock, a pocket watch. In the 19th century, pocket watches were essential tools. They told workers when to start, when to stop, and how to coordinate with others. But pocket watches were fragile. They had glass faces, delicate mechanisms, and if you dropped one, it could shatter instantly. So workers needed a safe place to keep them, a place where the watch wouldn't swing around, wouldn't get crushed, and wouldn't fall out. That's where the tiny pocket comes in. It was originally called a watch pocket. Its size was intentional, just large enough to fit a pocket watch snugly, not loose, not bouncing, held close to the body, protected by thick denim and reinforced stitching, and its position mattered too. It was placed inside the larger front pocket so the watch would be shielded from impact but still easy to reach. This wasn't a fashion choice, it was pure function. When Levi Strauss and other early denim manufacturers standardized jeans, the watch pocket became part of the design. And once a design works, it tends to stick, even as technology changed. As wristwatches became popular in the early 20th century, people stopped carrying pocket watches. The original purpose of the tiny pocket faded, but the pocket didn't disappear. Why? Because jeans had already become iconic. Manufacturers didn't want to change a design people recognized and trusted, and consumers didn't question it. The pocket was small, harmless, familiar, so it stayed. And over time, people began repurposing it. Coins, keys, lighters, later USB drives, earbuds. The pocket survived by adapting. But here's where most people get confused. If the original purpose disappeared, why hasn't anyone removed it completely? Why keep a pocket that almost no one uses for its original function? The answer reveals something deeper about how everyday design really works. And that's where this story gets more interesting. This is where the tiny pocket stops being just a historical leftover and starts becoming a lesson in design. Because in theory, removing it would be easy. Manufacturers could cut it out, simplify the pattern, save fabric, save time, but they don't. And the reason is subtle. Jeans aren't just clothing, they're symbols. When people buy jeans, they're not only buying fabric, they're buying familiarity. That tiny pocket has become part of what jeans are. Even people who never use it would notice if it disappeared. It would feel wrong. This is something designers understand very well. Once a design becomes iconic, changing it is risky. Not because the old version is perfect, but because people trust it. Think about how many things in your life work this way. Cars still have grills, even when they don't need airflow like they used to. Digital cameras make shutter sounds that aren't real. Phone apps still use icons shaped like objects we no longer use. These details anchor new technology to old habits. The tiny pocket does the same thing. It quietly reminds us where jeans came from. And over time, it found new purposes. People started using it for coins, for guitar picks, for keys, for lighters, and later it held SIM cards, USB drives, wireless earbuds. The pocket stayed relevant not because it was redesigned, but because people adapted it. And that's another detail most people miss. Good design doesn't always evolve by changing shape. Sometimes it evolves by allowing new uses. And here's something even more interesting. The pocket also plays a structural role. On classic jeans, the watch pocket reinforces the stress point where the larger pocket meets the seam. It adds an extra layer of stitching in an area that takes a lot of wear. So even when it stopped holding watches, it still helped the jeans last longer. Form and function stayed connected. Now here's the deeper idea behind all of this. The tiny pocket exists because jeans were built to solve real problems. They weren't invented as fashion. They were invented as tools. And tools tend to keep their shapes long after their original purpose fades, because changing them doesn't feel necessary. This is why the pocket survived the transition from workwear to everyday clothing, and then to global fashion. No committee voted to keep it. No brand planned it as a signature detail. It simply worked well enough to stay. And that's how most of the world around you is designed. Not through perfect logic, but through momentum. Once something fits into daily life, it becomes invisible, until someone stops and asks a simple question. So the next time you put on a pair of jeans and notice that tiny pocket, remember what you're really looking at. You're looking at a solution from the 1800s, still stitched into modern clothing. A reminder that history doesn't disappear. It gets worn. If this made you see your jeans a little differently, leave a like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's worn denim before. Because sometimes the smallest details carry the longest stories. And sometimes the simplest things hide the most misunderstood truths.